So, good morning, good evening, good night, good day. That's the Australian way, right? Good day, mates. My name is Jang Graat, and as usual, I create my slides at the very last moment. So this was done this afternoon, actually, and I came up with a slightly different title, which is FrameMaker plus DITA usability, because that's what my talk is going to be about. So let's dive straight in. Very briefly about myself. You see my middle initials. My parents actually knew that I was going to be a FrameMaker expert before FrameMaker was born. And I've been using Frame since 25 years or even more, and using DITA since about 15 years. I'm addicted to challenge. And well, one of the biggest challenges that I'm still facing is trying to think inside the box, and I can't do it. So whenever there's something, people tell me something, you cannot do this, then in my mind it immediately responds with, well, we'll see about that. And as Stefan has already mentioned, I'm doing so much with Frame that I earned one of my nicknames is the Frame Tamer. And you'll see a couple of small examples of that towards the end of this talk. So let's look at the common problems that I have seen in the past 15 years using DITA. Well, I just took these 5 points as being the most important things around DITA and the uptake of DITA, which has been way too slow for a beautiful standard like that. So moving to DITA breaks production. DITA is complex. Customizing DITA is hard. Customizing DITA output is even harder. And reusing DITA takes extra time. So I'm going to go through these one by one, and then we'll see some demos along the way. Let's look at the first point. Moving to DITA breaks production. What I mean is that in all systems that I've seen, except in FrameMaker, when a company moves to DITA, what they basically do is they have to move all the content into some kind of DITA authoring system before they can continue to publish. I've been working on many conversion projects, and I'm actually working on a huge conversion project right now where we're getting the content, but it's still being revised for the next production. The production deadline is somewhere in November. Before that, we cannot start converting the content because it's in a different system. After that, we have 2 months to convert everything, and that's a lot because this is changing everything. They're changing the authoring environment, the component content management system, the publishing platform. Everything is changing, and they have to make that change with all the content at once. This is not true when you're using FrameMaker. This is a slide I'm reusing from a presentation I gave back in 2012, changing the engine without stopping the car. Now let's assume you have a whole bunch of content already in FrameMaker, but it's unstructured FrameMaker. Now that will be organized in books, because that's how in FrameMaker you organize your content for production of PDF, CHMs, HTML. Nowadays you have responsive HTML5, web help, e-help, whatever you want to have. So the content is organized in chapters which are injected into a book, and that book determines the full publication. It's a little bit like topics in a DITA map. The point is that if I start converting stuff, then with FrameMaker I can convert one file at a time, which means that a file that is up for editing anyway, because something in the system has changed, so that file needs to be edited, then that file gets converted into structured FrameMaker, into DITA, and it's still linked back into the book, And FrameMaker doesn't really care whether that's structured or unstructured content. It is all the same to frame, right? I've actually had one project where we started automatically generating DITA topics from the source code, but the free description, the free text description of those procedures was still in unstructured FrameMaker, and the company didn't have time to convert everything. So I actually created documents that had both structured and unstructured content in the same file. I've never seen any system outside of FrameMaker that does that. In fact, nobody at Adobe had seen that before until I showed it to them. So FrameMaker can handle structured and unstructured content in the same book, in the same environment, and you don't have to convert everything first before you can then continue to publish. So after some time, you will start converting more topics and more topics and more topics until eventually you will have everything converted. And that may be a good time to push everything into a component content management system and then move on from there. So let me just briefly jump into my FrameMaker and show you, give you proof of what I'm saying here. So here we have a user guide. This is one of the samples in the FrameMaker package. And there's a bunch of files here. This is one file. This is about the systems. And what I've done is I have created a DITA version of this. The DITA version looks exactly the same. That's one of the other advantages of using FrameMaker for DITA, is that you don't get this ugly view that is nothing like what it's going to be when you publish to PDF. It is truly WYSIWYG if you're producing PDF, which is one of the main publishing targets still in this world today. So if I look at this book, and I've just updated the table of contents, if I look at the table of contents, you see chapter 2, systems, this is all good, right? Now, if I take this systems chapter and I exclude it from the content, I could throw it out or I can exclude it. Doesn't make that much difference. And I'm going to add my systems.dita to my book. And now we have a DITA file inside unstructured content. And just to show you that this is actually working, in the systems.dita file, I have added one section. You see that in the original, there is no meal ordering at the end, and here there is a meal ordering at the end. In the table of contents, no meal ordering, right? I just want to show you, this is just giving you some kind of confidence that what I'm doing here is not tricked in any way. It's actually true. I'm going to update this book, let it generate the table of contents. And then when I look at the table of contents again, I have to probably close it and do this while it's closed. There we go. And then I open the table of contents again, and then you see there is meal ordering right there. So this is actually the content that comes from a DITA file. This is content that doesn't come from a DITA file. The index, everything still works, right? There's one exception. If I have a DITA style cross-reference to something else, you cannot do that because this doesn't have, these other topics do not have IDs, etc., to make a cross-reference to. So that's the only exception there. In fact, you could still cross-reference from this chapter into a DITA chapter, but not the other way around. Until I find a solution for that and make some scripting that makes it work, of course. Okay, so let's go back to the slides. That is one problem down, right? I mean, as long as you're using FrameMaker for both the unstructured content and the structured content, moving to DITA doesn't break your production anymore. That is why I chose a title for my presentation that I've done many times, changing the engine without stopping the car. because that is vital for large organizations with large documentation sets. Okay, next problem. Data is complex. And this is something that we've heard, we in the sense of the data community, we heard back in the first number of years from the technical authoring community that data was way too complex. And I think the authors are right in saying that data is complex, because if you have full data, and at the time when we started hearing these things was at DITA 1.1, DITA already had 330 elements in those days. Nobody can use that many elements. Nobody needs that many elements. Still, DITA needs all of those elements because DITA is meant to be useful for many different business domains. So you have to have all those elements just in case somebody in some business domain might need it. But having all those elements available and visible all the time made the life of technical authors really hard and made the uptake of DITA really slow down. So after years of trying to respond to this and giving tutorials and all kinds of stuff, etc., from the DITA community, at a certain point there was a solution that was called lightweight DITA. And I was part of that committee from the start, but as we went along, I lost my faith in this kind of solution completely, because this is what lightweight DITA is. It is just one single tool. It has no semantic richness whatsoever, and I think it's the wrong answer to a legitimate complaint that DITA was complex, because there's too many elements. And as far back as DITA 1.2, that's in 2000. That was in 2009, I think. Far back as DITA 1.2, there was the introduction of DITA constraints. That's when immediately I started giving talks titled "Get a Grip, DITA Constraints," because DITA constraints are what you need. And in fact, any organization that is using DITA without any constraints, without any customization, doesn't understand the first thing about DITA, because DITA is meant to be customized. You should customize DITA because it looks like this, and you want it to look like this because this is something that people can use. And the full DITA is really almost completely unusable. So DITA is complex is no longer true, but still customizing DITA is hard. That is, that was still the case even when constraints were introduced. So the mechanism was there, but the mechanism looked like this. This is not what anyone in their right mind would want to do. Some XML geeks love this kind of stuff, right? But if you have to start making changes to these kinds of files, to the DTDs that determine which elements are visible, which elements are invisible, if you have to start making changes to this without a thorough background in DTD and XML, in short, you have to be a total geek to be able to do this. If you make one typo in this, nothing will work anymore, because the whole DTD will be invalid, which means nothing will work anymore. So that is an expert job, and that kept a lot of companies from taking up DITA, because yes, they thought, well, we could do constraints, but we do not have anyone in our company who can do this. And if we hire somebody, we're going to be dependent on this geek that we have to pay big dollars to make that change every once in a while. And this has really, really hindered much faster uptake of DITA in the world of technical documentation. So instead of that, I've been talking about this for a long time. In the talks that I did since 2010, even in 2010, I told people at the end of my talk, I told them, we need WYSIWYG tools to do the customization because it is a defined process. So why don't we create a user interface to make it easier? Because unlike a lot of people, their implicit assumption is if people don't know Angular brackets, they don't know structure. That is false. That is just total nonsense. People know structure, but they might not want to express it in Angular brackets. So let's go to the second part of my demo, which is customizing DITA. And I actually have a topic here, the topic.xml. And if I look at my, this is my structure view, you can see this is a DITA topic. And if I open my elements catalog, you see that in a title, these are the elements that you can use in a title in full DITA, in unconstrained DITA. I'm assuming that most of you will now agree with my statement that nobody should use DITA out of the box without doing some constraints or some customization, because this is insanity. This is totally ridiculous. But then, some people might need the line through in a title. Who knows who might need it in some kind of business domain? It doesn't mean that everybody needs it. So instead of trying to edit those DTDs and making constraints that way, instead of that, why not use the built-in tool for that? And I happen to know this tool very well because I programmed it. I was waiting for people to do a WYSIWYG tool for years and years and years. Nobody came up with a solution. That's when I tell them, okay, I'll do it. This is how I constrain my topic. So let's look at domains. Here are all the domains. Well, maybe I don't want to have any domains. So let's just delete all of those. Oh, and there's another source of complexity that was perceived. If you open this, you get all these attributes, which the normal author will never even touch these, because these, they might be needed by some kind of DITA processing in publication, or they might be needed even by a CCMS, but that doesn't mean I want to have them in my face as an author. So, you know what? Let's hide all those attributes. And let's see what happens. I click on this button, and now the software that I created in this HTML dialog is creating the constraints. Because, as I said, making constraints is a very defined method. There's no magic to it. It's just following the rules to make it work. Now you see here in this topic that I immediately get the constraints applied, because if I go into my title in my elements catalog, you will see, if I make it visible here, you will see that now in my title I only have these elements available. Only these are valid, and not like 2 pages down full of all kinds of customizations. The reason that I'm losing my my styling here is that I'm actually creating an EDD from scratch from my constrained set of elements. And of course, I need to import the styling again, which is done through CSS. And after I've imported the styling, that will look like I want it to look. That's another thing that we're not going to go into details about that, but I built an import for CSS. At that time, the CSS import in FrameMaker was really, really bad. They have improved quite a lot now, but this is what I've already built into that plugin. So let's go back and see if we can do even more than what I've just done. Actually, outside of the domains, there's also some modules that I might not even need. So let's see what we can do if we just try to deselect everything. The only thing that I have now is a topic and a body. And in the common elements, I have the title and the P element. Now, if you want, and I'm going to also disallow nesting. There we go. So for those who want lightweight DITA, well, lightweight DITA is nothing compared with what I can do here with just a couple of clicks and not using a whole different kind of system. You see that the only thing that is valid in my topic now is a topic, a title, a body, and a P. That's the only thing I have left. 4 elements in super lightweight DITA. And it just took me a couple of mouse clicks to do it. Okay, so I could, well, there's a couple more things that I could go into, like constraining a topic in on a different level, but I think we're gonna run out of time if I do that. So let's go back to, let's close this one and go back to the presentation, because I think I can safely state that customizing DITA is hard. That problem is done, right? With a plugin that is available since FrameMaker 2019, customizing DITA is dead easy. Okay. Next problem. Customizing DITA output is hard. Well, yeah, if you're in most of the systems that we have outside of FrameMaker are using the DITA Open Toolkit to produce any kind of output. And if you want to customize your output, then this is what you're going to look at. This is just one little snippet of one small XSL file out of probably about 300 XSL files, one calling the other and the other calling another one and yet another one, and there's a little bit of Java code as well, etc. If you want to customize your DITA Open Toolkit output, well, good luck with it. You will really, really need a couple of really experienced geeks for that. I mean, this is 2 levels up from customizing your DITA by creating a constraints file or editing a DTD. So yes, customizing DITA Open Toolkit output is hard. But let's look at what it looks like in FrameMaker. Let's look at one of the harder ones. I mean, customizing PDF or PDF output, like customizing a style, that is maybe doable. You could have a different CSS in your output and then it has a different styling. But customizing the look and feel of your entire output, your HTML5 responsive output, that is not hard at all if you're using FrameMaker. And this has been in FrameMaker for quite a while. I'm going to go back into Frame and show you that. It has been in FrameMaker for quite a while, and it even works on unstructured FrameMaker if you want to. So I'm going to close this topic because we don't need it anymore. In fact, we don't need that one either. And what I'm going to do is I click here, and then in my Publish environment, so we go to File and then you have a Publish. I'm not actually going to publish, but I'm going to look at the customization options that we have here. So in this Publish panel that we have here, you see there's responsive HTML5, mobile app, EPUB, Kindle, Microsoft HTML help, basic HTML, and PDF. So if I want to make some changes to my responsive HTML output, I simply click here and I click on Edit. I get this. First of all, I can do style mapping, which is great. You know, this is really, really useful. You click on something and you see this is what it looks like in your FrameMaker. This is what it's going to look like in the output because I'm using the source style for the output. But you can also map it to something else. You can map it to standard HTML, HTML1 tags if you want to. Okay, so cell body is going to be heading 1. Doesn't make any sense here to do that with cell body, but it just shows the interface of how you map some stuff. If you have headings like these might have numbering. So what do you want to do with the numbering? You want to have text in your output. You want to ignore them, which means they're gone. You want to convert stuff to lists. You know, all of that. You can map things to an HTML tag. You can do all the customization you like here on a level of which paragraph or character format goes to which format in HTML. So that is about the content. You can really change everything that you want here in terms of which content, what will my content look like in the HTML5 output. But there's more to that, because there's also, in responsive HTML5, there's also the template, and that's where this comes in. You have a choice out of templates. You can import or export a template, but you can also edit. This is the Azure template, and this is the easiest interface that I have seen, not just in technical authoring systems, but in general in web design systems, etc. The easiest that I've seen, where you really help the designer who doesn't know much about CSS. They just know a little bit, and you tell them, okay, this is where the layout font is. You click on this, and it selects the list box here that you choose to change the layout font. You want to have something else? There you go. I'm done. I have changed this layout font. Of course, this picture doesn't change, because that's just a picture, just a legend, and that says what is where in my properties. I'm going to go to the header and choose this and show, choose a new logo. Okay, that's here. So I can go here and browse for a logo. It is as easy as that. Background color, choose your background color. There you go. Okay. All of these options, everything self-documented here in an interactive image here. It doesn't get much better than this. So whoever wants to do DITA output customization in the DITA Open Toolkit, have fun with it. I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to use this interface to change the look and feel of my output and stick with this wonderful publication panel that I have built into FrameMaker. And obviously, lots of companies are paying big dollars to create PDF out of the DITA Open Toolkit. And here it's just all in the box. And this is probably the best PDF that you can get. Okay, so enough about that. I think I can safely state that customizing DITA output is hard. That problem is tackled. Okay, then we get to the last part of my on my list of problems. The reuse in DITA takes extra time, and this is something that I've been thinking about for a while, and I've seen many different DITA authoring systems, and none of them does it right. And I must admit that FrameMaker doesn't do it right either. And the reason is that, so let's look at how you would do some reuse. And I'm not talking about reusing topics in maps. That is only like 2% of your potential for reuse. Your real potential for reuse is when you start reusing snippets of content below the topic level. That is where your real gain will be. You build a repository of ready-made notes that you can just drag into your documents wherever you need them. That is where you get the big percentage of reuse that you can achieve. Not in those rare occasions where a full topic can be reused in one publication and also in the other publication. Okay, so this is what I have to do to realize DITA reuse. So it's the same for insert conref or insert crossref, but let's stick with the insert conref. It says, okay, I need to go to the function insert conref. Then I need to open the file that contains the reuse item. I search for the reuse item in the file. In many cases, I will not find it. because there might be a whole bunch of files and I might not always have the recollection of, oh, which file was this in, right? So if I didn't find it, I have to close the file, open another file, and repeat until I finally find the reuse item. And when I find it, I click on Insert, and I'm done. It might even be that the other file in which I know that there is a note that I want to reuse, but somebody who owns that file is editing that file. It may actually be impossible to open that file because there's a lock on the file and you cannot open it because, you cannot edit the same file from two different places at the same time. So in some systems, that is actually impossible to insert the conref at that point, even though you're just putting a reference to that conref in your own file. This is a lot of clicking. And, if you look at why it was made that way, I can understand that because it was made by software developers. And for a software developer, the goal is to insert a conref. But that is never a goal of a content creator. A technical author doesn't have the goal, oh, let's reuse some stuff today. That's a whole different world that they live in. So when the developer looks at the technique and says, okay, I need to make a method that allows doing this technique, inserting a conref. For the user, the goal is creating content, period. No matter if you have to type it up again, if that is easier than reusing something, then that is going to be the real world choice. But this is what a reuse for an author should look like. I'm an author, I decide I need a note in my topic. So I select the note from the Elements catalog because I'm doing structured authoring, so I need to click on Note to see, okay, I want to insert a note. At that point, I see, oh, listen, hey, look at that. There are ready-made notes to reuse. Oh, that is easy. I click on Insert. This is 3 clicks, right? And I don't have to open any files. Does this sound like magic to you or like, distant future? Well, I must say it's going to be a little bit in the future. It's not in FrameMaker 2020 because I'm still making it. This is what my plugin looks like. And I'm actually gonna, I spent a lot of time, a lot of evening time, etc., to get this work just in time. And I think that has worked. So let's close this book. We don't need that anymore. We're going to go to this systems data file because that's the file that I was using. Here you have the elements catalog. And this is what I was talking about. If I do this, I need to click on note and then insert a note and then, set here I can also do a conref if I know it by heart. I can just fill in the conref, which nobody can. Choose a type and then start typing away. And then I have my note. Okay. So the first action of the author in a structured environment is looking for the note. Okay, let's see how I can optimize the user experience. And I'm going to do this by running a script. And one of the good things about FrameMaker is that scripts are included in the package. You don't have to install anything. It is simply there. So I'm going to run this script, which I created over the past months. And you know what? This looks quite a lot like the elements catalog, right? There you have the elements catalog. Let me just put them side by side so you can see what's happening here. Let me put the structure view down here. Okay, so I'm in my content. I'm here. I want to insert a note. Here I would click on that and then click that button. I made it, of course, I made it look like the original elements catalog because that's what people are familiar with. There's a little triangle here. If I click on this triangle, I see, oh, you know what? There's a note, no batteries. There's a caution tools. There's a warning power, warning heavy, danger power. Okay, well, it looks like there's already some notes available, but how do I know which one I need to do? Okay. Oh, that's the text of it. Okay, yeah. Let's have this one. Click on that. There you go. I got my note, right? This is so much easier, and I didn't have to open any file because I know where those files are, because I'm harvesting all the reusable elements from either a DITA map or, well, it's going to be from a DITA map. I didn't finish that part yet, so I've hard-coded those things in here. But that is the next part where I'm going to harvest everything from a DITA map. And then if your DITA map includes a repository where you have a file that is resource only, all of those notes are going to be available whenever you click on in my version of the elements catalog. So I'm just going to close this because I don't need it anymore. Now let's look at a cross-reference, because a cross-reference is a different thing. You don't conref a cross-reference, but a cross-reference is also a very elaborate process that we have now in all of the data authoring systems. Same thing here, except that it does a different thing. I have a cross-ref. It gives me all the targets, all the possible targets. I click on it, click on that, and there we go. I have a cross-reference. This is what data authoring, this is what reuse in DITA and creating cross-references, etc. in DITA, what it should look like. And that's what I'm building in my plugin. There's a couple more things, a couple more details, because, hey, you know, if you're already building something that in this HTML dialog that is nicer to use, then let's go all the way. So, of course, in the elements catalog, you have this search, the search, because you had hundreds of elements. I don't, but okay, the search still works. But why not have this search work on content? I added this button because I don't know whether, you know, which node. There's a whole bunch of nodes, etc. So let's see if I can find a node that has batteries. Oh, there's one node. There you go. Click, click, done. Right. This is what I think data authoring should look like, and that is what I'm working on, and hopefully in one of the future versions of FrameMaker, if I can come to an agreement again with Adobe, they might actually have this kind of elements catalog included, which will make not only me happy, but a lot of technical authors, I'm sure. So there you have it. No more problems, right? Of course, there will be new problems in the future, but this is a very old picture that I've been using, but I think it's still pretty much valid if you just replace the faces with new faces like Max Verstappen and Lewis Hamilton. The combination of FrameMaker and DITA is made for winners, and that is the end of my talk.
Thank you so much, Jang. Thank you so much. It's very impressive. And rest what you have created there in a relatively short time. Very cool. I see there were a lot of questions in the Q&A pod. I have tried to answer most of them until now, I think. Basically, most questions were about deployment of the customizations. For the DITA customization wizard, can you deploy, is it stored in settings files somewhere or whatever? And can you deploy it company-wide in a larger authoring team, for example? This one basic question. I said, yes, you can, but maybe you can elaborate on that a little bit.
You can. There is a defined position where they live. There is some further need for possibly for some scripting to make it easier. But you can, in fact, with a couple of adaptations, you can, for example, use a network drive to install your customized templates. I must say that is a tricky one, because if you make customizations, you don't immediately want everybody to start using them. You want to test them first, and then you want to roll them out to your network drive where everybody has access, right? So the immediate copying of that to a network drive is not really advisable. But yes, you can move those to whatever location your structured application files point to.
Yeah.
In fact, a similar thing is true for and that is easier, a similar thing is true for the customization of the output. That is actually all of the customization of the output in the publish panel is written into a settings file, which you can put on a network drive, and everybody references the same settings file. So that is also a very nice option.
Yeah.
And for the okay.
And really a lot of positive feedback in the chat on your presentation as well. Here, I want to highlight one from Donna. Really enjoying the session. The speaker is really outgoing and positive. Need that in the weird pandemic times. Thank you for that comment, Donna. Very, very nice to hear such a comment. Well done, Jang. And Franz Josef Knielang wrote, okay, the DITA reuse view of another XML map is reinvented by Jang.
I hope so. I hope everybody's going to pick it up. Well, Adobe first, of course, right?
Yeah, and Kirk wrote, that was a nice walkthrough for someone like me who hasn't seen FrameMaker. Looks simple. And Sally wrote, yes, it is nice to see a FrameMaker related session. My company is just not big enough to make the jump and expense of Adobe Experience Manager work for us. And I was worried FrameMaker might be going away. Glad to see a FrameMaker session. No, of course, Sally, FrameMaker is not going away. Not at all. We just released in July the FrameMaker summer 2020 release, and all the updates are in the pipeline. We switched to, in the contrary, we even switched to an agile subscription model where we can develop FrameMaker faster than ever before and deploy new features and improvements faster than in the past. So a lot of that is happening at Adobe here with FrameMaker. But one last question here from Rebecca. That pick a node from a list when inserting the element thing. Will you be able to label which text pieces are reusable? We make conrefs from p tags, so if not, we'd have to choose from thousands of paragraphs.
Well, the simple fact is that the only elements that are reusable are elements that have an ID on them. So your P elements will not all have an ID on them. And what I'm always telling people, never ever do reuse from an existing publication. What you do is you create container topics. You create a repository that is never going to be published as is. You create one topic that holds all of your notes and warnings and danger, etc. You create one other topic that holds all your list items, procedure steps, what have you. And then from that repository, which is never going to be published as is, you're going to conref. You're going to conref into your topics, which means that you always know where your stuff is. And also, the person who does who owns the content is probably not you. You're just reusing those little Lego blocks, but somebody else is handling the editing, the reviewing, and has the authority to make those changes. I've done a lot of work in medical area where people, customers create medical devices, and if they want to if they update one note or one warning in their documentation, that means they have to go through the entire process of being accepted by the authorities in the US, which takes like 6 months before their device can be pushed onto the market again. So nobody touches those notes, not just any technical author. No, that's a very specific person who is in charge of safety, and only they are allowed to touch those notes, which is the same, that goes in the same direction as having container topics. That's where you have all your reusable content. And in your actual publication, you're just reusing those building blocks. In an ideal situation, you would have a documentation that is built out of reused building blocks without where everything is conrefed. Everything is a reuse item. So the problem, basically, if you organize your content in that kind of way, that problem will not appear, because you're not going to look at all the paragraphs in your documentation. You're only going to look at the reuse elements in your repository.
Yeah, and there's another really good question from Liz, and it's a very common question on the difference between formatting and styles within FrameMaker itself, and the relationship with those styles within FrameMaker to a FrameMaker template to the formatting of that content once it leaves FrameMaker, whether it's PDF or CSS, HTML5. So she's asking whether you would use ideally, do you use a FrameMaker template to format that output, or is there another route? Is there a better route to work with rather than relying upon the FrameMaker template to pass those things through to all your other formats?
That depends to a large extent to what type of output you're creating.
Yep.
I would say if you create PDF, then there's no reason to go shop elsewhere at all. Yep. And in fact, creating a good template for your PDF output, you could be using the Miramo plugin, which is built for FrameMaker, which is built to create all of that formatting, instead of having to do all of this work manually in the paragraph designer style and the character designer and all that kind of stuff. But basically, that is another tool to just create your perfect template for FrameMaker, because what you see is what you get. So if your output is going to be HTML5, then use a CSS. And in fact, as I shown you in the customization for DITA, I'm importing a CSS into the EDD to make that the styling inside of your FrameMaker authoring environment look what it should look like. So why not use the same CSS there? Right? Yeah. That was the whole reason why I started using CSS in the first place. So and other formats, I don't know. It's I don't think you need to get an expensive antenna house thing to license to be able to push everything through DITA Open Toolkit. If you have FrameMaker, who needs DITA Open Toolkit?
Agreed.
And that's also quite often I get the remark by customers who maybe. Some customers, some organizations are penny wise and pound foolish. They say, yeah, but FrameMaker is expensive. Oxygen is half the price. Well, actually not, because you're comparing a purely an editor with a editing, reviewing, publishing system in one, right? That's a different price tag.
Yeah. Excellent.